my question for you, and I want to get to Noah and Travis and a little bit more in the Open, is do you think the top 20 are those the fittest in the world?
Oh, man. The simple answer is no, I don't. I think there are people that are in that top 20 that are the fittest in the world. I mean, obviously Matt won and Sarah won, and like three-time champ, and then somebody who's been on the podium at the games. Like, you're obviously, no matter what the format, there are some people that are going to figure it out. But mathematically, the problem with the Open format from a selection perspective is that I don't want to say people are cheating, even though I do think that's a reality. People are cheating, but it's not a malicious, I am purposefully trying to climb the leaderboard and be disingenuous about what my fitness is. It's just the format of the Open is going to reward cheating by accident, even if somebody's not just consciously cheating. So conscious cheating is always going to be something that you have to figure out. And they have the video review process, they have the drug testing policies, and like all that stuff is going to need to continue to evolve if they want to protect the purity of the sport. What the biggest problem I perceive of as the Open being the thing that drives like the seeding at the games and all of that is from a math perspective. So let's use Noah as an example because people probably want to hear about him and whatever. He did okay on workout 1. Like, you know, he probably executed, like we called it an A effort instead of an A+ effort. He's not that great at rowing. He's not that great at wall balls. You put both of those two tests together against the best people and everybody else in the world who could potentially be big and just good at rowing and wall balls and put up a good score. But in the Open, most people are doing the Open in their communities. They're doing it at Friday Night Lights. They're doing it like, you know, with their friends. They're doing it at their gyms. And unless you're going to finish top 20 in the world now, you're not really like filming it, making sure all your standards are perfect because you are not trying to qualify. So they're not going to the person who's in 5,000th place. Like, I didn't get any of my videos requested for analysis, even though we did have judges for our people. But if somebody's doing Friday Night Lights, like for example, this Saturday we did a throwdown workout. I was in the middle of the workout. It was 3 sets of 10 unbroken snatches light and then 6 sets of 5 unbroken snatches at 135. So I literally only needed to count 1, 2, 3 sets done and then 5 more sets done. So I was somewhere in that 6 sets of 5 and I lost count. And I was like, I don't know how many sets I've done. And it wasn't even that much counting.
I think everyone's done that before.
So if you do that in a workout with rowing and wall balls where there's 19 reps, you can miscount rounds. You could miscount just number of reps. And when you're talking about a workout with Noah, it was 7 total reps that he needed better. So it was like a couple row cals and then or a couple wall balls to finish and then a couple row cals.
So 20 seconds. I mean,
20
that's the difference.
seconds. If a wall ball is 2 seconds a rep, that could mean somebody is cutting 1 wall ball out of each round and then potentially just getting off the rower a quarter second early before it rolls over.
Or not to mention wall ball depth. And people don't intentionally do that. I mean, like, you've seen me do wall balls 100 times. I'm trying to get to where it's like at parallel. I'm just getting below that, and I have some mobility restrictions too. So I would guarantee that people are also not intentionally cheating, but it's a tight standard to hold.
For sure. And if you're in a gym that's doing Friday Night Lights where you don't have judges, then that becomes an issue. Then even with judges. So like, I've judged workouts and then went back and watched the videos after, and I'm like, man, I was judging and there were still reps in there that were questionable that I didn't see.
Everything happens so fast.
Yeah, and that's why in sports on a big stage, you have video review. Like in tennis, the judge calls where the ball goes, and then if somebody's
go back and see if
you can challenge it. Yeah, like that happens in football.
It happened this last weekend. Did you watch any of the Final Four?
No.
So the Auburn-Virginia game went down to the final shot. And basically, right before Virginia inbounds the ball, there's like 4 seconds left on the clock, and the guy dribbles it off his foot. He picks it back up, starts dribbling again. Well, in basketball, that's considered a double dribble. They didn't call it. And these refs are paid $120,000 a year, and it's the second biggest game of the year. It's to go to the national championship. They made a mistake. And so for them, they're actually getting paid. Now, imagine if it's a judge that's doing it as a volunteer that doesn't even know the standards of CrossFit, that's in the gym. For most people, that's just, as a sport, and this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you, is like, how do we make this a legitimate sport? Because I think both of us, and then our entire organization, we care not only about like our jobs and well-being as this being a sport, but we actually care about the sport. We've dedicated our lives to it. You've been in it for how many years now? I mean, it's
like 11.
11 years, and me 8 years, and Mike and Brandy as a couple have been in it for 7 or 8 years, and so for us, we want it to thrive, but I think on my end, part of that is to have a set of standards that we can uphold, that everyone is actually upholding.
Yeah.
But in the system we have now, it's just too difficult to do that.
Yeah, and I do think this change, when it's all played out, I mean, it seems like there are people talking about potentially the games or CrossFit selling the games or a sponsor stepping up and taking it over. I think that the sanctionals and having in-person competitions be a primary driver of getting people to the games does take away some of the like worry about cheating, because like if you got to show up to a competition, the likelihood that you're still on drugs is not good because you're going to most likely be tested there on the spot. So yeah, maybe people will cycle on stuff in the off season, but still like you're going to lose some of those adaptations showing up, and most people in this sport probably don't have the money to go through that whole process. And then the standard upholding will be from judges in person, where if the judge has done judging before, there's going to be some level of quality control. Will it be perfect? Probably not until we can pay judges full time, but at least there is somebody there observing every time, and maybe there'll still be some mistake calls.
So that's been one of my things. I said this, I think, actually on the Mind Muscle podcast last year, and even before that, one of the things that I would love to see is, especially at the games, a set of judges that are paid and they have to go through a legitimate course, not the on. And CrossFit does a great job with the online course. Don't get me wrong, but an actual judges course where they're on site going through every single movement that they may see at the games, and then standardize it across the board from there. Just because even at the games in the past we've seen mistakes, and I don't blame the person. Like again, in the Final Four, the refs made mistakes, but at that level, the mistakes are minimal in most cases. Obviously, that's an extreme one. Whereas here, we have mistakes made all the time. And I'm the same way. I mean, I think 2 years ago was when Travis won a workout. I judged him for that workout, and then
4 reps or something.
CrossFit reviewed the video and said some of his deadlifts weren't deadlifts. And to this day, I disagree. I went back and watched the video, and I know that you guys said, nope, you're probably right. But then I look at other people's videos that ended up winning, and others that some of them looked worse. And again, it's just part of the sport that we're in, because there's so many movements and all those things. But I would love to see a set of standardized judges that get paid, that travel to these competitions, because then it sets everyone up for success. It's more of a legitimate sport when you have people that are in the system that are saying these are the rules and we're going to abide by them for each person.
Well, I definitely don't have the answer. I can provide criticism and say this isn't good, because everyone can do that. Everyone can look at the system and be like, oh, this isn't perfect. What I do think needs to happen, and why I said this is probably good, is that I perceive that with regards to the games, there's a decentralization of power now. Like all of the sanctional events really have pretty large level of autonomy with regards to how they do it. Collectively, we're all going to have to step up, and if we care about the sport continuing to grow and continuing to thrive, are going to have to come up with solutions. And that includes the top-level athletes and the top-level athletes that have special privilege. Like the sport in the past had all of these athletes that are like, they're just coddled because they're the media presence, and they love that. And I'm sure if I were in that position and everything was going good for me and I was getting all the sponsorship deals and all of the judging things were going my way, then like I might not criticize because I'm benefiting from it. But now when it's like, okay, well now it's the survival of the sport, and like making sure that you have other competitors there that belong there so that it doesn't look like a joke when you show up, then I think if the athletes were involved, the highest level ones, the ones that do have a voice, that have power on social media, if it's the other coaching organizations, instead of, complaining, my methods are better, their methods are better, they're not scientific enough, he's just emotional, like instead of having that type of bullshit back and forth, instead saying like, hey, we all want this sport to succeed. We may do things differently and have different beliefs, but we can get together and we can provide some sort of like, hey, this is a solution that could potentially make the Open a little bit more legitimate. Finding out who's in control at the games, like if it's Jess Glassman, fine, but from that discussion that they posted with Richie, like it doesn't seem like it. He's chairman of the board. It doesn't seem like it seems like he's focused on his mission with CrossFit Health, and the games is like controlled by some group or somebody within CrossFit? Who's in charge of that, where we could actually talk to them and have dialogue back and forth, tell us what your problems are? Is there something we can do from our end to make it better, to make it more legitimate? If we could get some sort of an organized, I don't know, body of people together.
A council, perhaps?
A council? Yeah. Council's a
Are
good
you in
word.
favor of an athletes union?
But most people don't put that level of focus. I don't know, because I think it would have to be dependent upon what is the primary goal of the athlete union. Is it so that they're getting compensated better? Is it so that they're trying to legitimize the judging standards, legitimize the open? Like, I'm probably in favor in all of the things that an athlete union would probably do or try to do, but I'm not sure that if in this much turmoil with all this stuff going on, if an athletes union created and stepped up to the table and were like, hey, we're making demands, I don't feel like there's enough leverage to be able to actually make changes. I feel like it might have a counteracting effect where people are just like, all right, fuck it, don't come.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need you at the competition.
With where we're at, we don't know.
Yeah.
But, the reason I ask, you see this in every other major sport. So how sports started and then how they got big, one of the steps there was standardizing judging, which obviously you see that in all the major sports, and then having both a coaches union and athletes union get together and work or collaborate on what the rules, like you said, standardizing, obviously the open, standardizing the sanctionals, all those things. And then compensation comes after that. And I mean, look, the reality is that people do this as a passion sport still.
Yeah.
But over time, for the amount of time that it takes to train and get to the top level, they're going to have to be paid. Yeah. And most of them are getting paid, but it's not a lot. Like, I mean, maybe the Frasers and...
There's probably like 20 people at an athlete level that are like making a living.
But think about it this way. There's contracts, Bryce Harper just signed a $300 million contract in the MLB, and I'm not saying CrossFit will ever be that. But when you say they're making a living, it's a good living, but it's such a small amount compared to the top levels in other sports. A $40 million contract in football, or the guys that are making hundreds of millions on the PGA Tour, whatever it may be. How do we get it closer to that, to where the sport grows because there's more money in it too?
Yeah, well, I think it's all just professionalism, more media. Like I don't want to. I do disagree with not investing in media based on the power that the CrossFit Games seem to have from a revenue perspective to be able to contribute from a business perspective to CrossFit, but I'm also not in the business. I don't know the financials.
Right.
I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what type of personal issues were going on. So like commenting on it publicly, I feel like I'm not really comfortable enough to do, but I do think that media and making a sport viewable, excitable, easy to follow along, know when the competitions are coming up, people commenting on it, having professional commentators, like all of that stuff, which the sport was trending towards before, I do think that needs to happen. So with it being kind of ripped out from the rug underneath the CrossFit, now I think it's going to need some time for the players that are out there doing media, and maybe we're included in that group, to become more professional and figure out how to make our stuff really dialed in, how to become better on camera, how to speak the way we want to speak, and do all of the stuff to make like a good viewable sport that just, like, that's the difference. There's people that just go to football games to watch football, that never played football, that probably don't even know what's going on. Like when I played high school and college football, my dad didn't know like the difference between offense and defense, but he would be at all the games screaming, cheering, like, because it's exciting to just be a part of. That doesn't really happen in CrossFit. The viewership is people that do CrossFit. So there's a downside to that it's maybe not mass appealable, but the upside is that everybody that watches CrossFit does CrossFit and buys CrossFit stuff. Mm-hmm. So it is a big benefit. And that happens in a couple niche style sports. Like that's probably true of fighting. There's not that many people that watch fights that haven't fought before, but the people that do watch fighting stuff, they buy fight stuff. They buy fighting education. They buy fight clothes. They buy fight gear. They buy gloves. They buy all this stuff. So the sponsors have an incentive to be putting their stuff with the highest level people in the sport. So I think that'll happen in this sport too, eventually, if it continues to get invested in.
For sure.